So, in how many seconds? A very good afternoon to you. We are coming to you live from the Okoa, Kenya offices in Nairobi, where the NASA leadership is expected to make the grand announcement that has been waited for actually by the entire world. Earlier, the NASA coalition held a parliamentary group meeting at the WIPER Democratic Movement Party offices, where some resolutions were made, and they are going to make part of the statement that the NASA coalition is going to read here, led by its leader Raila Amolo Odinga, Wycliffe Musalia Mudavadi, Moses Masika, Wetangula. All media houses locally and internationally largely are already here. Many Obi vans are in place, just waiting for the NASA leaders to arrive here and begin the press conference and make this major announcement. Members of parliament from the NASA parliamentary group streaming in one by one, and perhaps in the next 10 minutes or so, the NASA leadership will be here and they will be making this grand announcement that the entire nation is waiting for. I'm also joined by two members of parliament. The first one is Mheshimiwa Moitalel Ole Kenta, the member of parliament for Narok North. Welcome, Mheshimiwa. What's the situation in Narok? Were there any skirmishes witnessed yesterday after the announcement by IEBC?
Yes, I've gotten information that there were some skirmishes last evening at Narok between two different communities. From the onset, I like to say that these are very sensitive times. We need to be very sensitive about what we tell our neighbor. We should not gloat too much about success or anything. And I think we should actually be humble in our so-called success. I would like to urge the Kenyan people, and more specifically the Narok people, that they have no problem with one another. None of them has stolen the elections. The war is between the leaders, the ones who have stolen the election, and the ones who are saying that Kenya must be a democratic republic where everybody has a right. So there are those problems.
Looking at the figures released by IEBC, what was the voting turnout, perhaps from your own observation? What did you witness? Did the people of Narok actually come out to vote in the numbers as displayed by IEBC?
In fact, it's a shock because I can, with all confidence, say that those were cooked figures. Because, for example, in Narok North, yes, very few people voted, and that was only in the town, yes, Narok town. Yes. And those people could not have been more than 10,000 voters. Yes. So when you talk about 21,000 voters, yes, out of 78,000, yes, when you should have actually said 10,000 out of 78,000, I think those were cooked figures, yes, and it was all over Narok. But the worst part is that many people were bought, the so-called defectors, candidate for governor in ODM, two of them in fact for NASA, and the women rep. But I would like to assure Kenyans that they went with nothing. In fact, if anything, they lost more than they even lost the other time. So both elections were actually, the figures were manipulated. So it is not proper at all. Especially the Maasai community never voted. Because at the end of the day, they are saying, I mean, we are voting for nothing. And they listen to Raila Odinga and their leaders. So I can assure Kenyans that Narok people never voted. And I can only tell the Narok people one thing. The struggle continues. And we are going to deliver to them a fair, credible election in 90 days. If anybody thinks that they can interfere with Narok politics, please forget it. And you don't want violence, and whoever is trying to bring that kind of ingratitude through other communities, I think it will be unwise to do so.
Just lastly, you did mention that some people have been bought, including gubernatorial candidates. I mean, what does that portend for the future of NASA and perhaps ODM in the region? What does that mean?
In fact, to be honest with you, Narok is an ODM zone from the time of Ndimama up to this time. Yes. And 90% of the Narok people, especially the local community, yes, are actually ODM people. You don't, in fact, Maasais don't know much about NASA, but they know ODM. Yes. the future of Narok is ODM, and I can assure Kenyans one thing, that the Maasai people want to be involved in the development of this country, in democracy, in human rights, and in fact in restoration of what we have lost, like the Mau Forest and other historical land injustices. And they know that the only person who can do this for them is Raila Odinga. And they'll stand by him through thick and thin. And that is one thing that they should know. And any kind of intimidation, because there was a time we were locked up ourselves as leaders, will not work this time. Will not work. And we like to tell the international community, look at the people who never voted. Side with the majority of Kenyans, not a minority of 30% or even less. That is what the Narok people are saying.
Very well. Thank you, Mheshimiwa Moitalelo Lekenta, Member of Parliament for Narok North. And lastly, I'm also joined by the Member of Parliament for Mavoko, Mheshimiwa Makau. Mheshimiwa Makau usually is a very sporty kind of Mheshimiwa. Mheshimiwa, we did witness some skirmishes around Athi River, Machakos, and I remember Mheshimiwa Wavinya addressing a press conference very agitated about police brutality. What actually happened in Machakos and Mavoko?
So let me talk about Mavoko. We are still mourning the death of two men, a Form 2 student and a young man who was working, I think, at Portland Cement. They succumbed to bullet wounds, and we still have 3 people in hospital. One lady, a young man, and a gentleman who works for Vitaform. So you can see we already have 2 fatalities and 3 very injured Mavoko residents. So obviously, when I'm here, I also condemn the extrajudicial killings by our police. And I think it's very unfortunate because relatively, Mavoko has enjoyed a very quiet life. We've been had good working relationship with the area policemen, but how they turned against my people, I'm still perturbed. And I think even in my press conference, I appealed to the Inspector General of Police to take stern action. In fact, as we're talking now, IPO is on the ground, and it was unfortunate. The bullets which were launched in those 3 victims, policemen were there, very quick to pick up the bullets, or I think maybe to do some cover up or that kind of stuff. So I think I'm not a very happy leader right now.
Perhaps if I ask, many pundits or other political analysts did indicate before the poll that Machakos was kind of tilting towards Jubilee. What was the voting like in Mavoko and Machakos County in general?
I'll tell you, I'd put so many agents in form of observers. Yes. And I can tell you the total votes which were cast in the Mavoko constituency was 6,720. I know by 26th at 5 a.m. in the morning, they claimed it was 11,000. And by close of day, what has come out from IBC is about 19,000. That is a clear lie, because people in Mavoko never turned out. You know, this election was about Uhuru Kenyatta against the turn-up. So in Mavoko, all the police stations were empty, and we have evidence. So I can comfortably say that Machakos County is 90% NASA. If there is another party, I think it's only 10%.
Lastly, now that you say Machakos County is 10% NASA, is 90% NASA, Mheshimiwa Wavinya Ndeti moved to court to challenge the re-election of Governor Alfred Mutua. What can we look out for if there is a re-election? Is Wavinya likely to take the seat?
Mutua himself knows that he's a computer-generated leader, and he knows nobody loves him in Machakos, mostly based on his performance. Most people who live, particularly in Mavoko, which is, I call it more of urban, there is very little to be shown work done by the county government of Machakos. And I think if you go to roads in Syokimau, the water issue, I think Athi River and Mulolongo has got the highest number of donkeys and water cuts. So as opposed to what he prides in on media and public relations. There is nothing much he has done. And if there is, I repeat, I can assure you and I can guarantee you, Mutua is P.O. Box Nyumbani.
Very well, thank you very much, Mheshimiwa. That is Mheshimiwa Makao, Member of Parliament for Mavoko constituency. More members of Parliament from the NASA parliamentary group trooping in here, awaiting the NASA coalition leader, His Excellency Raila Amolo Odinga, who is set to make the mega announcement that the entire world is waiting for. Remember, Uhuru Kenyatta was declared winner yesterday by IEBC. There has been issues around the total number of voter turnout. International media like CNN putting it at 27%, some quarters putting it at 23%, IBC at one time putting it at 48%, back to 33%, and back to 40%. The NASA coalition leader did indicate that according to their own tally, the voter turnout was at about 3.5 million Kenyans. That means that about 70 or 72% of the voters did not turn out to vote, and according to NASA, that is a no confidence vote on the Jubilee government. Well, keep it here as we await for the NASA coalition leader to arrive here for this grand announcement.